We were doing it for Emmanuel. I would prefer to go back to 11, and depending on what anybody else votes on.
Probably will. Okay, so let me get the right document.
Where were we? I left my marker off.
Yeah, by the Mishnah on Chav Beis Amud Beis, the bottom 22b.
Chav Beis Amud Beis Mishnah. Thank you.
We had mentioned of this once upon a time. We spoke about those who hold you have to have a sukkah's keva. So this is where it brought down the Rabbi Gamliel. We'll see the Gemara soon. So the Mishnah says if someone makes his sukkah on a wagon, and nowadays the way to say it is on the back of a truck or something like that, or so something which is portable, over Rosh Hasfina, and that the Gemara is going to talk about the fact that it's very windy and it doesn't that the Gemara doesn't consider portable. That's considered set, not like a wagon, but the fact that it's very windy in the ocean. So that's more reason why the sukkah might not stand. We'll see the Gemara about that. Tanakam says it's okay. Kshera. You're allowed to go on the Yantif also. So that's not such a chiddush at this point that you're allowed to go onto a wagon. You're not going to be traveling with the wagon just to go onto the wagon. It's okay. You have the sukkah on wheels on a wagon and you're allowed to go on Yantif and Shabbos. Why not? And boat also. There seems there's no problem to go onto the sukkah on the boat. You're not traveling. You're not going to be going moving with the boat. So it's kosher. And that the chiddush here is that it's kosher. Rashi says the fact that it says you're allowed to go on Yantif is not a chiddush. It's only because the sefer is going to continue that some sukkahs you're not allowed to use on Yantif, even though it's a kosher sukkah for Chol HaMoed.
So like today, you couldn't go on a yacht, one of those big ships, even though because it sails all the time. So
they think about I allowed to go on Shabbos. That's not related to sukkah. As far as sukkah, there's no problem. The question will be is I allowed to go on Shabbos, and that's the sukkah in Masechah Shabbos that maybe you're not allowed to go on a boat within 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if you're there beforehand, if you started going earlier, then you're allowed to continue on the boat even though you're traveling on Shabbos, and that's already sukkahs in Masechah Shabbos. But as far as sukkah
Excuse me.
affect the subconscious of the sukkah. Yes, please.
Like on the picture that I have here in my book, when it says Sukkah Barosh Agala, it shows 2 horses. So it doesn't look like it's just temporary. It looks like they're gonna move. So I don't have anything I can't show you. It's in my book.
I have the book also, so I'll look at the book.
So I mean, it looks like to me it seems like it's the point is that it might move, and the boat also looks like it's in the middle of the water, not docked anywhere, and like the camel, I mean, is standing there, but the camel can walk. So why are you saying that it's they're not going anywhere?
So far, we didn't talk about the camel. We just spoke about the wagon, and the wagon. When you have 2 horses in your picture.
Why would the wagon be any different than putting it on a platform, which we already had? Yeah, if it's just that it's on a wagon and it's on wheels, so who cares?
It has wheels. The point is that it has wheels and it's portable. The picture you're looking at, the sukkah on top of the 2 horses.
Yeah.
We're not up to that yet.
We're not up to that yet. Oh.
Right. Now you have to have a picture. They don't have no picture. It's on a wagon. Just a wagon. It could even be without. Look on the page before. A couple of pages before that. Before the boat over there. It's on a wagon. The horse is standing in front of it, but you could unharness the horse also if you want to. There's just a wagon.
I know. I don't have. I have a different book. I think I'm in Oz V'Hatar or something.
Okay, but that's fine. So just think of a wagon. You could even take off the horse also. Unharness the horse if you want. If the horse is there, it's also not a question about the horse.
I see. You mean that it has the capability of moving, but it's not moving now.
Right. You call it what we call it. We call it in the back of a truck. You put it on the back of your. What do they call it? A 4x4. What do they call those things?
Yeah, a flatbed.
Yeah,
flatbed.
And it's okay even though it's portable. It's okay. And the chiddush that you're allowed to go on, that you're allowed to go up to the sukkah. The word that says olim, going up. Whenever it talks about going into a sukkah, we would say nechnasim la. You're allowed to go in. It always says the word olim because Rashi says someplace in the Masechta that they used to make. As a standard, they made the sukkah on the rooftop. So that would be going up to the sukkah, but not always. It's another way of saying you're allowed to go into the sukkah on Yom Tov. There's no problem going on to a sukkah on the top of a wagon, or there's our trucks nowadays. You can go up, step up on Yom Tov. No one's going anyplace, not driving. And Rosh Hashanah, the chiddush is going to be. We'll see soon that even though it's windy and might not last, but it's kosher as long as it's there. We'll see more as we get to the Gemara. Next case. Okay. Rosh Elon, all gab gamol kshera. This already also is kosher. What's muktzah? Okay, I don't know. If it doesn't say you're moving it, you're not moving it. It's not being moved. I think that it should be kosher. You're not doing it with your hands. I think that's not kosher. Mutter. I think it should be mutter. There is a Mishnah who talks about Evan Amistadedis, but I still didn't find out that he says that it's better not to sit onto a stone which could move. I didn't figure out why yet, because that's with your body. Why can't you sit on a stone which is muktzah even though it might move? So here, let's put aside that it's also Gala would be at worst a klisha lachta leser, and that you'd be allowed to move the sarf gufo. So surely you'd be mutter by a stone. Mishnah seems to say to be machmer. I don't know why. The Mishnah continues on top of a tree, like it's made a tree house. You made a tree house. That's going to be a sukkah. Of course, you took away the branches on top. They should be able to have schach and not branches. But the fact is that it's being supported by the tree. All gabigomo, you put it on top of a camel. They have like these little, like the Arabian kind of camels that you have a little booth over there. So you put schach on top, and he wants to have a sukkah, 7x7. Everything's fine. But aim lo no b'yamtiv. It's kosher. But on yamtiv, you're not allowed to go to climb a tree, and you're not allowed to climb an animal. So therefore, it's kosher on Holomoid, but on Yantif, don't use it. Rashi points out that if you did use it on Yantif, you did the Avera of going on the animal or the tree, you still use the mitzvah sukkah. 2 different points. There's a side point that in Yantif, you're not allowed to climb a tree or an animal. The Mishnah continues with this you saw that you're not allowed to go up on a tree or a house, or what's it called, a tree house, that the sukkah is going to be a tree house that has a tree sukkah. We'll call it a tree house, a tree sukkah. Now it talks about how many of this floor of the sukkah, how many is being supported by the tree and how many by the floor. You could have some walls that come down to the floor and some walls that just start by the tree, that's supported by the floor of the sukkah, which is supported by the tree. So the Mishnah says, it depends how many. Even if you have some of the walls that are man-made, not man-made, that's what the word means, but man-made. But the point is that it goes down to the floor and it's not being supported by the tree. If you have 2 walls supported by the tree and the third wall supported by the floor, or even 2 that are supported by the floor of the ground, and one is still supported by the tree, it's still, you're not allowed to go out of Yantif, because the Mishnah is going to say that the rule is that it would not be supported only if you have the tree. So even if it's partially being supported by man, but it's partially being supported by the tree, and therefore you're not allowed to go on Yantif. In all these cases, the sukkah is kosher. The only issue is are you allowed to climb up this tree house or not? So it says if you have 1 or 2 walls that are being supported by the tree, so then you're not allowed to go on Yantif. But shalosh, if you have 3, shalosh b'de'adam, even if you have a 4th wall, you don't have to have the 4th wall. But shalosh b'de'adam, b'achas bilam, shev al Yantif, because the 3 walls would be enough to support this tree house, this tree sukkah. So therefore, even allowed to go on Yantif, even though you did make 1 of the walls supported by the tree, but you don't need it. It would have stood up. Nothing to do with the sukkah. The floor would have stood up alone with the support of the boards that come down to the floor, and you don't need the one that is the one of the tree. They talk about maybe Messiah. Sometimes they talk about something which is supporting, even though it couldn't do it by itself. But the Mishnah says that it could have been held up by the 3 alone, and therefore it's kosher. The Mishnah ends off with a klal. Klal, on top of the Fav Gimel, Kol, Shei Notel, Elon, Vechol Olamod, if they ask Mokshe, will not be If the tree would be taken away, and still the sukkah will still be standing by itself, because here you have like 3 walls that go down to the ground, then you'd even be allowed to go into it on Yantif. Okay, so just to sum up the Mishnah says that Berosh Agala, Berosh Asfina, on top of a tree, on an animal, all these are kosher. The Mishnah just talks about if you're allowed to go on it on Yantif, so on the wagon or on the boat, there's no problem going in it on Yantif, but on the sukkah that's being supported by a tree or by an animal, so then you wouldn't be allowed to climb up to it on Yantif, on Shabbos, because you're not allowed to climb a tree or an animal on Shabbos and Yantif. And the Mishnah ends off that if the sukkah would have been supported by the floor alone, without the tree's help, so then even though you have a 4th wall that is being supported by the tree, it doesn't make a difference. It would have been stood up by itself anyway. Okay. The Gemara first talks about the kashrus, the fact that it says that the sukkah on the boat is kosher. That's not so simple. The Mishnah says that's kosher, and the Gemara is going to talk about that. The wagon, the Gemara doesn't talk about. And the wagon seems to be that's kosher according to everybody. And but as far as the boat, the Gemara is the issue. The Gemara starts, we'll talk about the wagon in a second on our own. Mayim Asisin, who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Kiva, the Tanya host, is a cost of Rosh Hashanah. Here doesn't say Rosh Hashanah. That's to point out that here just says Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara on the Ches, when it brought down this sugya, it does say Rosh Hashanah over there, question in the Girsa. But we'll first learn our Girsa. If you have a boat on a boat, Rosh Hashanah means that Rashi says means like high up on top of the boat, like someplace high where it's more windy over there. The higher you go, the more windy it is. So Rabbi Gamliel, Posa, Rabbi Gamliel said, Rabbi Kiva Machshir. Rabbi Gamliel says that sukkah is possible, and it wasn't the right way explained because it's so windy, and it's not going to be able to stand. My said Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Kiva showed going to the A story happened that they were on a boat and Basukkahs, and Rabbi Kiva made a sukkah. Amar Rabbi Kiva was a sukkah. Rosh Hashanah, he made a sukkah over there, but Rabbi Gamliel didn't because he knows that it's not kosher anyway. So probably he ate out of the sukkah, slept out of the sukkah because there's nothing to do. He had a place without a sukkah. But Rabbi Kiva, he made a sukkah. The next day, the wind blew and there was no sukkah anymore. So Rabbi Gamliel checked Rabbi Kiva. Where's your sukkah? Like Rabbi Kiva knew that his sukkah was going to fly away. It wasn't arguing them with Siyas. But Rabbi Kiva said it's still a kosher sukkah. But Rabbi Gamliel wanted to say, you see, they can't stand over here anyway. The Gemara explains what they're arguing about. The Kul Yalma. If a sukkah cannot stand even in a normal wind of the dry land, means this is the gear to us also, even though we're not in the middle of the ocean. When you have a sukkah, it has to be able to be strong enough to be able to stand in a normal wind. Whatever's considered a normal is a ruach mitzuyah, normal wind. Sometimes you have a extra strong wind, hurricane, these things. I'm not sure what's called a ruach sheni mitzuyah, but if it's able to stand, it's not able to stand even in a regular wind, so then you're not Yotzei. I'm sorry, did I say it right? Just again, the Kul Yam, everybody else. If it cannot stand in a regular dry land wind, so then it's surely nothing. If it's so strong that it can even withstand a not normal wind, which the Rosh is going to say soon, that's the same as the Yam. The normal wind of the Yam is considered a not normal wind of the Abasha. So then, if it's so strong, he made it super strong that it can stand even in the not normal wind, so then surely it's kosher. And if Rabbi Gamliel would have had enough material, whatever he needed in order to make such kind of a sukkah and the boat, he would have done it also. But he didn't have the ability to. Or that it's strong enough to be able to stand if it would have been in the Abasha, in the dry land, but it's not able to withstand the regular ocean wind. So then, Gamliel goes that you have to have a permanent dwelling. We had this one dafches. Always, also in the beginning of the Masechta, we had the whole sugi about 20 yamas. It was also about Diras Keva, Diras Arai. So Gamliel is of those that know that you have to have a permanent dwelling, and therefore it's not permanent. The fact that it could get blown away in the place where you are right now. You're in the yam, and it can't withstand the yam, so it's not called a permanent dwelling. So therefore, it's not a good sukkah. Kiva holds that all you have to have is a temporary dwelling, which is how we paskin, and therefore, since it could withstand the regular wind, even though it can't withstand the not normal wind, so then it's kosher. So therefore, what we get out of this Gemara is that surely you have to have a sukkah that could withstand the normal wind of the Abasha, where we are, but does it have to be able to withstand a not normal wind? So I think that Rabbi Gamliel would also hold that in the Abasha, you don't have to have that it's be able to withstand a not normal wind. I think, I'm not sure. But in the Yam, if you're in the Yam, surely the hills, you have to be able to withstand where you are. And since it can't stand where you are, so therefore it's not Yotzei.
So even though you put it up like an hour before, the first night is the rice. After that, it's not even the rice.
No, the whole sukkah you have to eat in sleep in a sukkah, but you don't have to eat if you don't want to. The whole difference the first night is only that you don't have to eat if you don't want to. And the first night you have to eat, like matzah. You're not allowed to eat chametz the whole Pesach, but the first night you have to eat matzah. The rest you can eat potatoes, eat matzah, whatever you want. But you have to eat the sukkah, and the rest of the sukkah you don't have to eat if you don't want to. You don't have to sleep if you don't want to, but eventually you're going to sleep, and eventually you're going to eat also. So is the if you when you are eating a chilas keva, we spoke about if you're only eating peros and these things, then you don't have to. But if you're eating a formal meal, if you're sleeping, you have to sleep in the sukkah. The whole 7 days is all deraisa. So what are you saying about the first night?
Okay, so let's say you're on a ship. 2 days it's going to get blown away. The captain tells you.
It's not able to withstand the normal wind over here. So Rabbi Kiva says it's still kosher. Rabbi Gamliel says it's possible. Already now.
So Rabbi Gamliel wouldn't even eat in the sukkah, even though he had the sukkah.
It's not a kosher sukkah. It's not a kosher sukkah.
You better eat outside.
It's like, let's say you have a sukkah that only has 2 walls. Only has chamas and bubas. Yes, it's a puzzle sukkah. It's not kosher only if it's able to be keva. It's not keva, so it's not keva, so it's not a sukkah. So what's the difference? He told Rabbi Kiva, he's sitting in a sukkah. Well, you're not sitting in a sukkah. And the next day he told him, where's his sukkah? In a shtach only. But you see that according to Rabbi Gamliel, he wouldn't be yotzei. It wouldn't be yotzei. And if you have no sukkah, you have no sukkah. It's middle of the yam, he has no sukkah. So this is the halacha like Rabbi Akiva, that it's enough to be the diras aray, and therefore if it's ruach mitzuya diabash, it's good enough. They talk about that sometimes people don't realize that the ruach mitzuya is sometimes a pretty strong wind, even in the abasha. Sometimes their house is within a courtyard and surrounded by buildings, and there's no wind at all because it's surrounded by buildings. But the sukkah alone wouldn't be strong enough to withstand. It's not good enough. That seems to be a machlokes. Mishnah Berurah is machmir. Mishnah Berurah says that even though the buildings are surrounding your courtyard, and that's why there's no wind, but your walls of your sukkah wouldn't be able to withstand, or not only the walls, the schach would blow off. All about this is the ruach mitzuya means not only the walls shouldn't fall off, it also means that the schach shouldn't blow away. So just because it's surrounded by buildings, the Mishnah Berurah is machmir. That's not called that it can't stand. That it could stand. It can't stand. Just because there's no wind, because you're blocking the wind. The Chazon Ish, I've written down the Chazon Ish's note. He leans to be lenient about that, since the Ma'aseh there's no wind that's going to be blowing it away. But that's Machlokes Achronim already. As far as Hagalah, the Gemara, the whole Gemara did not talk about a wind. Instead of the Mishnah that is kosher for the wagon, and here that says Gamliel argues, he only argues on a boat. He doesn't argue about an Hagalah. So that was a question in the Gersa before. Some say that according to Gamliel, that you have to have a keva, so then it shouldn't be portable either. And Agamor doesn't say so. Agamor doesn't have that Gersa. That was a question in the Ches place over there spoke about it. Okay, the next sugya. But we surely hold that as sukkah diras aray, so therefore surely it could be on top of a car, on a wagon. You can put it over there because we hold sukkah diras aray, so that's kosher. The Mishnah continued about a gabi gomel. And it says that you're allowed to have a sukkah on top of an animal, no problem about that. The question is only if you're allowed to go on Shabbos, Yantiv, you're not allowed to go on Yantiv because you're not allowed to climb an animal. But the Gemara says not so simple that it's kosher. Our Mishnah knows that it's kosher, and that's how we asking. But in the Brisa, some argue. Mastis and Mani Rav Meir, the Tanya Hosses of Kosa Agabi Behema, Rav Meir Machshav Yudah Posa. Only Rav Meir that it's kosher, and that's our Mishnah. We pass like Rav Meir. Usually pass like a Yehuda against Rav Meir, but here that it's a Mishnah, we pass like Rav Meir. Rav Meir made it into the Mishnah against Rav Yehuda. So an animal, sukkah, which is on top of an animal, a camel, the example, or two horses that Rashi talks about, you put a board over the back of two horses, a fancy case, make sure the horses don't separate from each other, and you put that's the picture you're looking at there, Yaakov, that over there it's also a gabi behema. So Rameir knows that is kosher, Rav knows that is kosher. Why should it be puzzle? Of course you can't go on and Shabbos and Yantiv, but why should it be puzzle? So that the Gemara is going to talk about a new reason which we didn't talk about. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, why should it be puzzle? It don't go on Shabbos and Yantiv, but it's kosher sukkah. The pasuk says make the holiday of sukkahs for 7 days, and the Gemara Darshans make a sukkah for 7 days. Sukkah ruya l'shiva shma sukkah, sukkah sheni ruya l'shiva lo shma sukkah. It has to be a sukkah which is usable for all 7 days. You can't make a 1 day sukkah. It has to be a 7 day sukkah. We had the concept a little bit once upon a time ago, and over there the issue was some hold you have to make a sukkah for all 7 days. You can't make a sukkah chol hamoed because it's only a 5 day sukkah. We don't pass like that. We hold that it's enough to make a sukkah any day you want to. But as far as this halacha, it has to be roy l'shiva. It has to be capable of standing for all 7 days. So since you're not able to use it for 7 days, it's going to stand, but you're not allowed to use it. You're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go on it on Shabbos and Yantiv. The tree, or the case of the animal. So you know that it's possible even on Chol Hamoed because it's not a 7 day sukkah. It's only a 1 day sukkah. And the Gemara Zakasha May should agree to that also. It's interesting. The Gemara agrees. Everyone agrees to this. That it has to be capable of standing for 7 days. It could be that if you make a sukkah, I'm not sure, but if you make a sukkah which is not able to stand physically, it can't stand for 7 days, then everyone knows that it's not good. Rav Meir answers, Anami with the Raisa Mechza Chazir, Rabbanu the Gazruba. The Gemara says, Rav Meir also agrees to the principle that you have to have a 7 day sukkah. But the reason why it's called a 7 day sukkah is because the Raisa, you ought to go into the sukkah. This issue of going on the tree on an animal, on Shabbos and Yantiv, is only a Yisrael Rabbanan. You might tear off a branch, but with the Raisa, you're allowed to climb a tree and an animal. So therefore, the sukkah is called that it is fit for 7 days. Rabbanan say you're not allowed to. So it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's a kosher sukkah because it's usable with the Raisa for 7 days. That's the end of that sukkah. That's what we pass. We pass like a mayor that it is, even though with a bunny, you're not allowed to climb the tree, but it's still kosher and chol hamoed. That was the second sugya. And now we have one more sugya, and it starts over here. It wasn't in the Mishnah. The next case is not in the Mishnah. The first case, we spoke about a boat. We said the machlokes was about aray and keva. We passed like Rabbi Akiva that sukkah diras aray is good enough. So therefore, even though it can't stand in the ruach mitzuya, the yam is good enough. Second sugya was in our Mishnah also about on top of the animal, and everyone knows that you can't climb it on Yantif. But the question was, is it kosher on the Chol Hamoed? And our Mishnah says yes, like a mayor, so you paskin. But the view holds that it has to be royal ship. But since we're Rabbanan, you're not allowed to go on it on Shabbos and Yantif, so it's not a kosher sukkah even a Chol Hamoed. You pass like a mayor that it is kosher because it is called royal ship, because with the rice you're allowed to go on it. And now the third sukkah, which is going to be the end of the day, And this case the Mishnah did not talk about. Asal l'behem adofin l'sukkah. You use the animal as a, that wasn't the case in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was that you were on top of the animal, and you had 3 walls, 4 walls, but you were on top of the animal, on top of the gomel. Now the case is that you're on the ground, and the schach also can be supported by the ground, but one of the walls is an animal. You had 2 walls, you needed a 3rd wall, so you took one of the animals and you stood it there, and you say, stand, sit, as they tell the dogs, and now he has a 10 tefachim, whatever he needed, and 3 whatever dimensions he needed for the wall, the animal is fine, but the question is it kosher or not? So we didn't have that in the Mishnah. Now this is a discussion in the Gemara. Use the animal to be a wall of the sukkah. It may a poster be the machshir. So why should it be posted? What's wrong? It's a wall. What's the problem? So the Gemara says other applications to this Yisod of Meir. He says anything which has ruach chaim. At this point, we're not sure what it means, but let's say ruach chaim means a living being. So it's not kosher to be a wall for a sukkah or a lechi for a mobile. We know that a mobile, again, that he has the alleyway going into Chatzeros, and you have the front wall is opened up at the Rishus Harabim, and the Chachamim said you have to make some kind of a lechi, a korah, for a mechitza or for a heker, and you put something by the entrance going into the mobile. So could use an animal, take an animal, put it over there, and he's not lechi for Shabbos. So he says no, a living animal could not be used for a lechi. Also, possibly be roast. We have it also that if you have a bore in Rishus Harabim and the bore is a Rishus Yachid, so you wouldn't be able to draw water from the bore because you take out a Rishus Yachid, putting it on the Rishus Harabim, and people went to be all the regel and they had animals, and on the way, how are they going to give drink to the animals? So they have to make a mechitza around the whole area in order to make the whole thing is a Rishus Yachid, and taking out water from the Rishus Yachid to Rishus Yachid, but people don't have a lot of wood on the way, so they made a leniency. They allowed to use the 4 corner frames, each one amma by nama, 10 tefachim high, and then the whole area is considered included. That's called pasi biros. Pasi means a board, biros means the plural of the word be'er, and Rabbeinu now says that you can't use a living animal or a living being, ruach chaim, kol sheish ruach chaim, for pasi biros. So we don't know. The Gemara is going to talk about all of them. Below Godo Lekeber, that's not the same subject. Till now we spoke about mechitzas, a wall for a sukkah, a lechi for a mobui, a pasi for biros, also Rishus Yachid. But Godo Lekeber, Rashi always says that a Godo means the cover of the coffin. Or says the cover of the grave, or a monument that they'll make a golel. The golel is a stone usually, and a stone is usually not makabel tumah, and it's a special halacha that a golel is makabel tumah, something which is used as a cover of the coffin or a monument. So it gets tummy, it becomes tummy. The stone itself becomes tummy. Like what we have monuments, the stone itself becomes tummy. The Matseva. There's someone told me a tour guide that archaeologists think that a golel is something else, which seems very reasonable. It means the Rishonim, they didn't know the fact. They were saying that's from the Gemara, it's not just but not from the Messias. But it seems that a golel, they say that whenever they find Ma'arot Kehura, means the old way of burying was not the way we do, but they had a cave, and then they would have kuch. The kuch, how do you say? Anybody know what the word is for a kuch? That they started making it again nowadays because there's
Right.
what do they call them? You know what they call them? That they make a hole in the side wall and they slide the mace in. So they had not a wall that we have a wall, but they went into a cave, and in the cave, the walls of the cave, they dug out, and that's where they put the mace in. So they found by all of these, they find them nowadays. So by all of the entrances into the cave, there's a round stone. A round stone. They had a round stone. That's called Golo. It sounds like the Golo. Golo sounds like a round stone. We'll go Lewis Heaven. And they did that in order to protect like a door. But they didn't make a little door because anybody could open it up. They wanted to protect that from Ganabim, whatever it might be. So they made a round stone. And it's possible or probable that that's what the Golo is. And that also became Tameh. It's part of the whole system of the Kavura. And it's not mamish on top of the Aron or not on top of the Matseva, but it's the Golo.
It was outside of the cave.
Outside of the cave, right.
So even then it became.
Right, it's considered part of the cave system, the Kura. Okay, that's the shot what the Golel might be. And anyway, it sounds reasonable that might be what it is. But anyway, but Meir says that a Golel, even though a stone is Mekabel Tumah, a stone for this it becomes a Golel, but an animal, let's say if it's temporarily, they put an animal over there. According to Rashi, the scenario would be a strange scenario. They put an animal on top of the Aron in order to temporarily cover up the scenario sounds strange. This shot is a bit more reasonable. Rashi didn't have the Messias anymore, but it could be that that's a shot in the Golel. And it means that they blocked the entrance to the cave with the animal temporarily, is that considered a gola? So Rav Meir says that a live animal doesn't become a gola. Even though you put the animal over there, it doesn't become tamid. And the Gemara is going to discuss that also. We have to figure out how come it shouldn't have a din of a gola. And once we mentioned all these things about a Ruach Chaim of Rav Meir, we throw in one more halacha, Mishum Rabbi Yosef Galili Amru, Afein Kosun of Gitei Nashim. There's another issue that Rabbi Yosef Galili said, not Rav Meir, but Rabbi Yosef Galili said that you're not allowed to write on an animal a get. That, let's say, a horn, whatever the case will be, a horn, that he wants to write a get on the horn of the animal,
On a living animal.
on living animals, he says you're not allowed to. It wouldn't be a good get. We don't know why not. Why not? You can try to get it anything. That's not to be parchment or anything. So why is the animal not good? So we'll discuss that also. Or maybe not here, we'll discuss it someplace else. I'm not sure if the Gemara is going to talk about it. I didn't go so far. But we'll leave that. That's not, does Rashi bring down anything over here? Rashi says the Gemara is going to talk about it later on. So it is going to be a sugya. Okay. So now the Gemara goes back to Rav Meir. So back to sukkah, that he holds you can't make an animal to be a live animal to be a wall of a sukkah. Why not? My time with Rav Meir. Why does Rav Meir hold that you cannot make a animal to be a wall of a sukkah? So Machlokes Amarim. Abai Ram Hashem Atamus. Ram Hashem Tivrach. Abai says because the animal might die, and if it's going to die, so it's going to, the pashtus means it's going to fall down, and then it's not going to be 10 tefachim. The small has to be 10 tefachim high. When it's standing, it's 10 tefachim. When it dies, it falls down, and it's not anymore 10 tefachim. So don't use it because it might die. Rabbi Zera says, l'chari, easier point, Shema Tivrach is going to walk away. Why should it stand there for 7 days? It's going to walk away. So well, the Gemara is going to soon say, of course, you have to be Chosh Shema Tivrach. Rabbi Zera surely makes sense. The Gemara is going to talk about that soon. So now the Gemara wants to analyze the Machlokes of Rabbi Zera. It starts. The Pil Kosher, now there's some animals that are very big, and the Gemara goes very graphic. An elephant. It doesn't have to be so graphic, but why not? So a big animal, even if it dies and falls down, it's also 10 tefachim. It's much more than 10 tefachim. So the Gemara says there's no chash that's going to die if it's an elephant, because even if it does die, it's 10 tefachim. And if it's tied up, it's not no chash that it's going to walk away. So the pil kosher, that's the first case. A tied elephant, there's no chash that it's going to die or that it's going to walk away. It's not going to walk away because it's tied up, and it's not going to die. It is going to die. You don't care if it dies because it's still 10 tefachim. So there's no problem with short kosher because even if it's going to die, the corpse, the carcass, is going to be 10 tefachim. So that's not a problem. And surely kosher. Keep leaking the pilshe and kosher. If it's not tied, it's elephant. So if it dies in its place, for some reason it got you told it sit, not sit. You told it stay. It stays. It doesn't go any place. But it's not tied up. It might die. So with this next case, pilshe and kosher. Keep leaking the pilshe and kosher. It's elephant, big animal. Even if it dies, it's still 10 tefachim high. But it's not tied, so I might take a walk. If the choshesh, at this point is thinking that there's no choshesh, one who holds might die, it's not choshesh, it's going to walk away, which surely needs explanation. Why not? The Muslim right away going to jump on that. But if you hold the only choshesh is going to die, here we don't care that it's going to die because it's still 10 tefachim, even if it dies. What if you hold it, might take a walk? See here, it's not tied up. It might take a walk, and it might not be there, and then you're going to be without a sukkah. But the more says the obvious question, everyone should be choshesh just going to walk away. So the Gemara says, of course, you're right. If it's not tied up, then surely it might walk away. If it's not tied up, an animal which is not tied, even if it's an elephant, but surely it's not going to be. We say it's not kosher because it might walk away. Why not? It's not tied up. Talk about it is tied up. So the machlokes wasn't if you're choshesh and b'tivrach. Of course you're choshesh and b'tivrach. But the B'zer meant to say you're only choshesh is going to walk away. You're not choshesh is going to die. So if it's tied up, so it's not going to walk away. So everything's fine.
אבל שיהיה חם, בסדר? טוב, תודה רבה. הנה זה בוס.
Possible to mute 1 second, please.
I have a question while you're doing that, Rabbi.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought that the walls had to be there before the schach. So, like, when did the animal get there?
If you wanted to be there before the schach, so it's there before the schach.
No, I haven't seen her for a long time, even if she's around. It was also strong.
Yeah, go ahead, Lev Yaakov. Is that okay?
Well, if it walks away and then it comes back, that would not be good enough because then the schach is already there, right?
If Yehoshua walks away, so then we stop over there. Once Yehoshua walks away, so we say it's possible right away, even before walked away. And the one who's not Yehoshua walk away, so it's not walking away. So the
And
Gemara says,
we're not dealing with we put it there later, like we built a sukkah and then in other words, we built the sukkah around that wall. That was the first wall, was the animal apparently.
if you say that you need this wall to be there before the schach, so then you're right. Then the case is that you put the wall before the schach. Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara says that you surely have to be Yehoshua is just going to walk away. He says, Divrach, escape, is going to escape. Why? The boy thinks, well, I don't know if it has to be so escaping. The was being dramatic, an elephant and escaping. But why should it not take a walk? Why should it stand there for 7 days? But the Gemara says, of course, you have to walk. Yehoshua is just going to walk away. The case is only when it's tied up. In other words, everyone agrees you have to be Yehoshua is just going to walk away, and the issue is only when it's tied up. And the issue is, are Yehoshua also that it's going to die? Besides walking away, which you took care of that problem, maybe it's going to die. And the Gemara is going to talk about what's walk if it's going to die. So let's see the Gemara. If it's not tied, surely it's not good because it might walk away. The issue is that it's tied up, but it's not an elephant anymore. Again, elephant which is tied up, no chash, because even if it dies, there's also 10 tvachim. But this animal over here, this behemoth, is not a pill. This is a small animal, a sheep, whatever. And if it's going to die, then it's going to fall. But it's tied up. If Yehoshua said it's going to die, so even though it's tied in its place, but it might die and fall down. So then you're not going to have 10 tvachim. But if the Choshesh is only that it's going to run away, but not that it's going to die, so you're not Choshesh because it's tied up, and you're not Choshesh that it's going to die. But the word says, why not? Is it not something to be Choshesh for? Maybe it's going to die. But the Gemara says, no, that's not a kasha. Of course, to ask maybe it's going to walk away was a good kasha. The Gemara couldn't answer that. But to answer, how come someone's not Choshesh is going to die? We can understand that. Who says that it's going to die? Why should it die? So Misal Shchicha, it's not usual to die, and therefore you're not Choshesh. You say Chazaka, might say the word Chazaka, if it's alive now, it'll continue being living. No reason the Choshesh is going to go away. The Gemara is happy at this point that that's machlokes. If Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda said it's kosher, and it's not kosher for anything. Rav Meir is the one who said that it's not kosher. We don't know why, and everyone holds that the reason would be because it might walk away, and even if it's not going to walk away because it's tied up, Abai says also kosher shem tamus, and it's still problematic because it might fall in its place. The Gemara has a problem here. Second wide line. This is a general question before we start the whole sugya that even when the animal is alive and standing over there, but the body of the animal doesn't go down to the floor, and the feet are usually 3 tvachim. So it's not going to be a good mechitza even when it's still alive and standing because there's space in between the feet. Revacha means space, like revach, and beni means in between. Rashi says it means in between the feet. That even when it's standing and it's obeying and standing in its place, it's not a good mechitza because there's 3 tvachim from the ground until the abdomen of the animal. The Gemara answers, you're right. That's we talk about that you filled it up. David lay boots of a dafna. You filled it up. Under the feet, you put hutz of a dafna. Hutza means like lulav leaves, and dafna, Rashi says other kind of branches. I'm not sure what kind of branches it is, but it means that's the Gemara's usual. Hutz of a dafna is the Gemara's example always of using some kind of temporary mechitza. So you put something under the feet of the animal in order to stuff it up. And he tells the animal stay, and he tied it up. As if he didn't tie it up, then surely you're hold that as possible. And if he tied it up, Abai says it may still Choshesh is going to die. The more is a simple kasha. Forget about dying. Why shouldn't it sit down? Why shouldn't it lie down? Even if it's tied up and it's not going to walk away, but why should even if you hold that it's not going to die, you're not Choshesh for that. But why shouldn't it lie down? Maybe it's going to lie down, and it's not going to be 10 tvachim high anymore. The answer is the Mesicha Beshli Malel Enechnami. It's only kosher if it's tied up with the ropes to on top. So the case is very. The Gemara doesn't have a problem. That's to give Akdama. The Gemara sometimes talks about weird cases, like the scenario that never would have happened. But the Gemara is being down on the principle, and we don't care about the case exactly. We answer all the cases. Eventually, we're going to fall off a ball. This is not going to stand. All of this shot is not going to stand. But the Gemara has no problem to talk about cases that are not practical because we're not looking for the practicality of the case. We're talking about the principle.
Rebbe.
So here we're talking about lie down. He's going to lie down, right?
Rebbe, like Leib Rigur's pictures, I have a 1-sentence quote from Tosfos in Kuf Nun Beis Amud Beis in Shabbos. It says, quote, Kama devarim ashkachan delo shkichi umayri behu hashas laharos lanu hadin v'drush v'kibel schar kedamrinin b'chulin daftes amid aleph, and also here what you just said.
But I said a little different because Drush v'kibel schar means that it has no application at all. It's just for the sake of learning the halacha, even if it has an application. But there are many Gemaras that spoke about very, the cases are really impractical. It's never going to happen. But the Gemara wants to talk about the case for the principle, and the principle is applicable. Means a lot of applications we have nowadays, for modern inventions that they didn't have in those days. But we take the principles out of the Gemara. The Gemara has no problem to discuss something which the application is far-fetched, as long as we get the principle. And a lot of times the Gemara will isolate the case, and to get that isolated case, you have to say it's very impractical to say that isolated case. But the principle is what we're talking about, not the actual case. So it's a little different than Tosfos. And there's a Sefer Darash Rishonim that talks about this issue at length. And just to point out that no one is ridiculing, but Apikorsin did ridicule these kind of Gemaras, not exactly this one, but the Gemaras that are even more far-fetched, and they make they just poke fun. And he explains with much wisdom that they're the ones to be ridiculed because whenever you talk about something abstract, you want to get to the principle, you don't care about the case. The case is not the subject. You want to get to the principle. It means nowadays all the inventions we have about electricity, or it might be about airplanes and all kinds of inventions that they didn't have. So and nowadays much more advanced than just electricity and airplanes. As the generations go further, it gets more and more inventions. But the principles we have to take from the Shas, they didn't have all those applications. So the Gemara very often talks about far-fetched cases just for the sake of the principle, which is the point that the Gemara was interested in. Okay, so the Gemara talks about, for this machlokes, just to get to this case, we'll have to talk about that animal is tied up with ropes, mila'el, just to get those three words. The mesicha means like stretched, it's held up, actually with ropes, mila'el from on top. So from the schach you have, that's a pretty strong schach over there also, but it means that you have a frame that's going to hold up the animal, and it can't sit down. So now the obvious kasha is, so what's if it dies anymore? Now the more is getting really, so now let it die also. If you have an animal which is tied up and it can't even lay down, so if it dies, also not a problem. Once you said that the case is talking about that it's tied up with ropes to the top, so there's no problem. Let it die. It's still going to be a good mechitza. So the Gemara says again a big dochak. The case is that the whole sukkah was 10 tefachim high, and the animal was 7 tefachim plus. And the reason why it's kosher is because it was loved, and if the animal is going to die, even though it's going to be suspended in air because it's held up by these ropes, but when it dies, it shrinks a bit, and that shrinking is going to make it to be less than the 7 tefachim, and it's not going to be any more loved to the roof, and that's why it's not going to be a kosher sukkah. Very dochak. But the Gemara is willing to bear the dochak just to get through the possible machlokas. The Gemara eventually is going to fall off of all this, but at this point, the Gemara got through it. That's going to be the machlokas. What do we have so far? Just one more line before we just to get another line of the Gemara over there. If the animal's going to die, he's going to shrink. The word kava, it's kapsa. Nowadays, they use it also in Hebrew, with kavech. If it's going to shrink and he's not going to realize, then I'll sit on the sukkah, and he doesn't realize that it's not a good sukkah anymore. At this point, what did the Gemara do? That there's a machlokes if you can use an animal for a wall of a sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. Rabbi Meir says not. Why does Rabbi Meir say not? Because it might run away, it might not stand there, and therefore even while it's there, it's not kosher because it might go away, and you won't realize it. Or Rashi says you're not going to have a sukkah, or you might not realize it, and you'll continue eating, and this is not a good sukkah. The Gemara says that even if it is tied up, Abaye says that we're still concerned. It's not good enough to be tied up because it might die. And the Gemara says if it's a big animal like an elephant, which means any kind of animal, that even if it dies and it's going to shrink, the Gemara says at the end, it's still going to be 10 tefachim, so it's not a problem. But it's an animal that if it's going to die, it's going to shrink. What's the problem of shrinking? First of all, the Gemara says the whole issue is talking about that it has to be suspended, this animal, even when it's alive, or else it has to be filled in between its feet with schach, with branches, in order to be a kosher wall, because it doesn't have, it's not level to the ground. It's abdomen until the floor. That was the side point. And also you have to make sure that's not going to lie down. So you have to be suspending it with ropes to stand up. But the chash is if you hope that it might die, so then the baby's going to die and shrink a bit, and he's not going to realize that now that it shrinks, it's not within 3 tefachim of the schach, and now he doesn't have a mechitza anymore, and he's going to continue eating without realizing it. Okay, quite the whole case, but we still could continue. The Gemara is going to stop on the side point that Abaye says Rabbi Meir's choshesh that's going to die. That's what happened just now. Rabbi Yehuda said that the wall is kosher, the animal could be a kosher wall. Rabbi Meir said it cannot be a kosher, it's not a kosher wall. Why? Rabbi Zera said because it might walk away. Abaye said, even if it's not going to walk away because it's tied up, it might die and shrink. So Abaye said that Rameya's Choshesh is going to die. And that the Gemara is going to open up a window on that. Is that true? Is does Abaye hold that Rameya's Choshesh, something's going to die? Rabbi Yehuda lo Chayish Lamisa, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says not. That's what comes out. That Yehuda holds that it's kosher because it's not kosher that it's going to die. Is that all true? But not everyone's going to go someplace else about a chash of dying. But not. Bas Yisrael is just the Kohen. A daughter of a Yisrael who married a Kohen. So when she's married to a Kohen, she's allowed to eat Truma. A Yisrael is not allowed to eat Truma. A Kohen may eat Truma. And a Kohen who marries a woman, she's allowed to eat Truma also. That's called Kinyan Kaspel. That once he marries her, so she's also allowed to eat Truma. But the question is that they're not together right now, and he's far away. He went overseas, and she doesn't know if he's still alive. How long, they don't have communication in those days. So is he still alive? Is he allowed to continue eating Truma, assuming that he's still alive? This Mishnah says that she's allowed to continue eating Truma, and she's allowed to assume that he's still alive until she finds out differently. But the kasha is, there's a Mishnah, some places says differently. We have a kasha to that Mishnah from a different source. Someone gave a get to his wife that it should take effect 1 hour before he dies. He didn't want to really divorce her, but he wanted to make sure she's not going to become an aguna, or what else would we say? Or maybe it was a issue of chalitza, and the brother was not available to do chalitza, whatever it might be. So he gave her a get that should take effect an hour before he dies. So now he's there, everything's fine, but he might die within the hour. Is she allowed to eat truma? He's a Kohen, she's a Bas Yisrael, they're married, she's allowed to eat truma. But if he's going to die within the hour, then retroactively, she was not married. The get took effect an hour before he dies, and maybe she was not allowed to eat truma. Is she allowed to eat truma, assuming he's going to live out the hour? So it says, Asur lechel b'truma. She's asked to stop eating truma because she never knows when he's going to die. So that's a contradiction. The first Mishnah said that you're allowed to assume that he's living until you find out differently. And the second Mishnah, or Brisa, I forgot if it's Mishnah or Brisa, it says that she is not allowed to eat because he might die within the hour. Back to Abaye. Abaye is back on the scene. And Abaye is going to talk about the mayor. He found, Abaye found the machlokas of Meir and Yehuda, if Yehoshua, someone's going to die. No difference in animal or a person. The Gemara seems not to differentiate. And over there he says, I found that your mayor holds that you are not choshesh, that things are going to change. You're allowed to go to Chazaka, and Yehuda is the one who's choshesh. The Gemara is going to bring a source that you find machlokas of Meir and Yehuda. It's not talking about dying at all. It's something else. It's talking about a kli dying. It means that something might break. A kli might break. Shemi Yivaka note that a jug might break. And the Gemara is comparing everything together. Yehoshua, something's going to happen. So here's the case the Gemara brings, and this is all part of the Gemara's kasha, that you're saying Rav Meir is the one who is chayish l'misa, Yehuda is not. Here, in our case of the sukkah with the wall of the sukkah, he's saying of Yehuda, Rav Meir is the one who's choshesh, the animal's going to die, Yehuda is not. And here, Abaye himself said, Rav Meir is lo chayish l'misa. Rav Meir, lo chayish l'misa. And that's Gemara's kasha, that before, Abaye was the one who said that Rav Meir is chayish l'misa. Those was before, Abaye said, Rav Meir chayish l'misa. Rav Meir is the one who's choshesh, is going to die and shrink. And here, Meir, the one who says that according to Rav Meir is lo chayish l'misa, and Yehuda is the one who's chayish l'misa. What is the case over there? The Tanya, we had this once upon a time, or maybe even twice. Somebody bought wine from the kusin, and he has to take off truma. That they're not believed that they take off truma and ma'asrus, and therefore he has to tithe it again. And he doesn't have either the case is that he doesn't have a cup to put in. Usually, what do? You have to take off the necessary tithing. If it's food, so you put it to the side. But if it's wine, you have to put it into a container, into a vessel. You say this tenth is going to be Truma Gedola, and then another tenth is going to be, I said a tenth. It says 2% is going to be Truma Gedola, and then a tenth is going to be Ma'aser Rishon, another tenth is going to be Ma'aser Sheni. So, but he doesn't have another vessel in order to put the tithings into. So is there a way that he could drink the wine without tithing first? He has what we choshesh for tevel, or matmai at least, and he has to be choshesh that he has to take off tithings. How could he do it with liquid? So he says, Omer, he says the following: right now, he's declaring that the wine that he's going to leave over at the end is going to be truma. So he doesn't know where it is right now. That goes into Breira. The Gemara is going to go into Breira later on, not today. And the issue is that if he could declare right now, that which I'm going to leave over. I don't know what I'm going to leave over. I don't know which molecules are going to be left over. Whatever's going to be left over, two out of this 100 is going to be truma, which is the 50th. That's how much you're supposed to take off a truma. And then I saw my Rishon. Another 10 that I'm going to leave over at the end is going to be my Rishon, the 10th. and Tisha, and the 9 that's left over after that is going to be Ma'aser Sheni, because once you take off 10, you only have 90, so the Ma'aser Sheni is only going to be taken off for whatever's remainder. You don't take off Ma'aser Sheni from the original 100. You take off 2, and then you have 98. So then the 98, you take off 9.8. The Gemara just calls it 10. It's 9.8 for Ma'aser Rishon, and then you have another. Then you have about 90 left. So you take off 9 for Ma'aser Sheni. Or Mechal v'shos miyad. Mechal, some say to be Mechal, some say you should be Mechal to transfer the Kedusha of the Ma'aser Sheni onto money. Some say that you start Maskil, you start right away, and you drink. Give Rav Meir. Rav Meir says you can do this. Rav Meir says you're allowed to take a Tumas Ma'aser before, not that I take it off, sorry. You designate it, you declare it, and later on, I'll leave it over. And we're going to have the next page on the page. I didn't put up on the screen the next page. We'll stop over here, but that's the Gemara continues. Rav Yehuda, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon, they say you're not allowed to. And the Gemara thinks the reason is because you might not leave it out there. It might break. You have a barrel of wine. Maybe by the time you're first drinking, and you say, I'm going to leave over, then it might break. The barrel might break. If the barrel breaks, then you didn't leave over any Tumas Ma'aser, and it comes out that you drank Tevel retroactively. So Rav Yehuda, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon are choshesh for that. Rav Meir is not choshesh. So the Gemara thinks that you see, Rav Meir holds the one that you're not choshesh l'misa, and not choshesh the barrel's going to break. So not choshesh someone's going to die either. The opposite all the same category. The animal's going to die. The person's going to die. The barrel's going to break. And Rav Meir over here says you're not choshesh, and that's the Gemara's kasha. If Rav Meir is not choshesh over here, so how come Rav Meir is choshesh? The animal's going to die. A contradiction in our body. And the Gemara's going to say, the next line is going to say, you're right. We're right. That Rav Meir is the one who's choshesh is going to die. And over there, in case of the Steva, but is a Kohen's wife allowed to drink each truma if she doesn't know if he's alive or not, if he's going to die? Rav Meir is the one who's machmir. He's the one who says chaysh l'misa. And the case of the truma, we're going to have to figure out how come by the wine, it's Rav Meir says over there that you are not choshesh, and we those you are choshesh. We'll have to see more Bez Hashem on Motzei Shabbos. So Motzei Shabbos 9:15. 9:15 Motzei Shabbos. Everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos.
We have an extra 5 minutes. If you need now,
Getting earlier. So it gets long. Yes, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Yes,
good
o'clock,
Shabbos,
yes, o'clock.
9:15.
Thank you. 9:15.
Good Shabbos. Yeshakoyach.
Shabbos. Thank you. Thank you. Call to everybody.